Hey.
Hello.
So hello everybody. So my name is Tae Oey. I'm from the EPAM system. Our company is actually the system integrator, and I'm a Drupal developer. So I worked on Johnson&Johnson project. Also, currently I'm working on the AT&T project. We are actually providing the platforms for AT&T, and also another big project was the Lockheed intranet. We had their legacy systems. So today I'm going to talk about Migration API. So frankly, actually, I really didn't have a full experience with a Migration API. It's not like I was jump onto the migration project from A sources to Drupal 8, but in this case, I want to present how I use the Migration API for my project. So I kind of utilize the API and plugins they provide, core and the contributor modules. I just want to share with you guys how I used it. And then one of the things I'll go through the overview what the Migration API is, but so I just want to focus that a lot of things are kind of done, completed. You can take advantage of the contributor modules, and they provide a lot of plugins, source plugins, process, and also destination plugins. There are so many, to the point actually I encourage you to just go through the documentations and see what's available before you start create your own custom modules or custom plugins or anything. So because it's pretty well defined. So when I had a little bit of migration experience about several years ago, that's a very early beginning stage of the Drupal 8. I had to migrate some image carousels, the photo, the sort of like they call it carousel, but it's more like albums. And they want to move on to Drupal 8 site. There was Drupal 6 site, but we have to move on to Drupal 8 site. But back then there's no the plugins that are available. So actually, what I did I create the custom module for D6 to export into the CS file, all the with IDs and everything. And then I wrote another module on D8 to import that. So there was kind of I did that, and also the database structure was quite different, D6 and D8. So there was a lot of work. So when I started looking at D8, it was now all the plugins are provided. And it's really nice, and documentations are really well written, and then you can actually test. So today I'm going to show you specific example with using the source plugin API, using the CSV file as a source, and then I'm going to show you how I implement custom modules with that. Instead of using the UI and the Drupal side, you can actually write your custom module using the source API, source plugin, and then I'll compare those two things. It does the same task, but I'll show you two different things you can do it in the custom module versus you can do a UI. And also another big feature of the Migrate is about rollback. So I'll present how the rollback function is so useful. You bring all the nodes or all the images field you need to bring, and if something doesn't look right, or if not what you want, you can just roll back. So that's the kind of safety feature. So you also, if you have any questions, you can just raise your hand, or just you can raise your voice. So how do I go to next? So the migration process is actually it's called ETL process. E stands for extract, T stands for transform, and the L stands for load. So extract means it's a source. The data can be migrated from the database, loaded from file which is CSV or JSON or XML, or web services. So if you go to the Drupal website, there is the whole page with just specific. I'll go through the documentation, because I think also another point I want to kind of emphasis on this today. So reading the documentations and the API, the Drupal.org, so we can actually get familiar with it. And when you need to look at the documentation about any migration, you can go to there and then know where exactly you can look at it. So that's the extract, and then there I'll go through the available plugins for the source process. And the second is transform. It's a process, the row. So basically, the migrate, the basic process is pulling from any source and then turn into a row, and then map into any entity that could be a content entity or configuration. That's the general process. So the transform, that's when the row is sent to the process phase. That's the where you can map. You can map one field to the other one, or vice versa. You can do all the mechanisms, or you can like implement your logics here. And the last is a load, which is simply, so load it means like, usually in the Drupal, the load means you are pulling, when the load node is you're actually pulling from database to load in your site. This load actually is different. Its load is from load into the database to your site. So it's a little bit, don't get confused with the terms, because sometimes when they use a lot of function called load node, right? So you are actually loading from the database, but this load in the ETL process is you're actually, so basically it's like more like a saving, they call load, because this is a general term for the migration process, so they're using it, but another more clear term would be save. Save, it'll be same with the load. So basically extract, transform, load, which term same meaning with the save. So the load means the destination, the transform, the row is passed into the destination phase where it's loaded, so which saved. So we will talk about more in depth those three processes and some of the available plugins, and just get more familiar with what it does. So that's this is the graphical kind of presentation. On the bottom, there's a source. You extract data using source plugin. That's so there are source plugins, a lot of them available from the core, or there's also Contrib modules too. So you can find and what are the things you need, and then transform data, which is using process plugin. It's the same thing. There is provide one from the core, and there's one contributor one where you can write your own custom. And the last one is the loading the data using destination plugin. There are a lot of plugins that are out there for destinations, for files, or any entity types. If you have and this is also you can create the dependencies as well, because if you want to have some load has an entity reference, you want to make sure that the entity reference is going to grab the UUID before you actually load it. So that's where you want to kind of tweak the code. So yeah. So is it kind of clear with the ETL process, what it is? I do know that it's a pretty general term. A lot of, it's not only for Drupal specific. It's all the other softwares that are using, any platform A to B, that's called ETL process. So, and then Drupal kind of accept the concept and then kind of follow their principles. So Migrate API, before we talk about in the plugins, so there are things I want to emphasize on. There's a modules from the core, which is Migrate. It's a general purpose framework for Migrate, but you have to enable it. It comes with it, but it's part of a core. But in order to use the Migrate functions, you have to enable it. So, and then also there's another Migrate Drupal. This is for when you're migrating Drupal 6, 7 to 8. This has a lot of features you can provide. You can grab the field directly from D6 field or database or SQL and dump into the D8 directly. They provide a lot of tools. And Migrate Drupal UI, that's actually give you a little bit of better GUI for the migration process. And then the last one is Migrate Multilingual. It's actually experimental. I think it's still, it's not green light yet, but it's there. So you can test it. But all these modules from the core for Migrate, you have to enable it. Make sure that when you do it, go to that core and then enable it. And the other significant modules for the contributor modules is Migrate Plus and Migrate Tools and Migrate Source CSV. So probably, all the modules that are, if you do any migration, the Migrate Plus and Migrate tools are pretty, essentially, you enable it, and you download it first. I use the Composer. Composer require you do the Drupal/Migrate Plus, and also you do the Migrate tools. And then you make sure you enable it. Because a lot of, even though this Migrate source CSV, it actually has you have to have those Contrib modules turned on. Otherwise, the functionality is not going to be bring on your Drupal site. So let me show you real quick on the site. So since we are talking about here, so these are all the modules I talked about here. This Migrate multilingual, so I didn't enable it. But when you start the migration process in the migration folder, that's where all sitting on all of your Migrate modules that you need. You have to make sure that you enable it. Because sometimes I noticed that you did another site installation, new fresh site installation, you're testing your modules and all this stuff, and all of a sudden it's not coming up because you have to make sure that it's been enabled. So I enabled for this demo, I used the Migrate, and also I use the Migrate Plus, Migrate Tools, and Migrate Source CSV. I enabled them, and then so we can take a look. So that's major kind of a core, the Drupal modules from the core and the contribute ones, and the next one up. So I'm going to now talk about the source plugins. So what the source plugin does actually just fetching the data from the source, which is source could be CSV or XML or the database. So today I'm just going to actually do real quick about how, without any custom coding, how can you fetch the data using just the Drupal, the backend and Drupal site. So there is the quick tutorial. I think it's in here. This is migrating data from CSV source. It shows a really good the kind of tutorials you can go through, and then, but I'll go through real quick and show you what it does and what you can see in your, when you do this, when you follow this tutorial. So here, so now, this is my fresh site. I'm gonna go to here. So I'm in here. So here. So you come to here. This is the under configuration. If the way you came here, we can find the URL is to come to the configuration tab. And under configuration, there is a configuration and synchronization. So I'm going to import the migration entities throughout this UI. So I'm going to come to here, see here, there's a lot of tabs you can synchronize, import, and export. I'm going to do the single import. So I'm going to the import tab, and I'm going to the single item. So here you have to choose, because your actually configuration type is the migration. So make sure if you don't turn your migration module in core, you won't be able to see this field in this drop-down list. So you have to make sure that it's turned on. Now, here in this box, paste your configuration here. You're going to paste basically your YAML file. Has all the configurations. So my configuration, I just copied from this file. Basically, this is the configuration I'm going to copy. I'm going to highlight, if you look at it, it's pretty straightforward. The ID, that's what you're going to use for your migrate. So you're going to say Drush migrate import, and you have to give a specific ID. So you can have a Drush import, Drush migrate import article CSV import or images, anything images that the IDs you want. And there's a labels and migration groups and the source. Now you have to specify what kind of a plugin you want to use. We're going to use the CSV, which is part of the migrate as the source CSV module. You have to be turned that on, and that will provide your plugin that you need, and the path. So in order to do this exercise, there's one more step you have to do. You have right above these steps, you have to create this CSV file and save it locally in your Drupal Drupal site directory somewhere. You know where it is. So right now, I saved mine to the site under default. So I'll show you. So basically, big step is you enabled all the modules, and you create the CSV file, and you create the configuration. And then you're going to tell the Drupal, okay, I want to import this one with this ID name, so I can use it. So that's the main steps. So right here, so before you do these steps, I want to show you what is actually right now site is. Right now, this is my virtual box. So let me clear up a little bit. So this is I'm inside of the virtual. I'm inside of Vagrant. So I'm using the Vagrant for my local environment. So I just installed the vanilla Drupal site 8.6, and all I did was enable the migrate, all the modules that I mentioned, and download the Contrib modules, the migrate plus, migrate tools, migrate source and CSV, and that's all. So here, so before you use the migrate, any functions of the migrate, you have to make sure that you have the Drush version is right. So in your console, make sure you have a Drush, and then make sure that it's up to date. Otherwise, you won't be able to use it. So here, if you do Drush, oh. So if you do the migrate right now, so I was testing it. I have one. It's called test. I already tested locally. So what it does, when I add another one with the example, we're going to call whatever the article CSV, you are going to expect to see another one with the migration ID, which is whatever you are giving, article CSV imports with the status, probably idle, and blah, blah, blah. That's what your expectation is going to see, right? So right now, ignore this one. This is my test. So we're going to import that configuration in your site right here. And we are going to, so I made already a file that I cleaned. So I think it's, where did I put it? Oh, it's okay, just I can just put it here then. So here, everything looks good. Oh, let me, this one, let's give me an ID, which is, bless you, article, like let's go through test for migrate, CSV. So I'm gonna give an ID here, and the path, make sure that your file is right here in the right directory. It's a relative, whatever your doc root. I put on my doc root, and then I put site default, whatever your file is. Only thing the migrate, when I'm working the migrate commands, when there is an error, it really doesn't give you kind of clear error messages. So it kind of better so it doesn't find. Or unless you have a debug function on, it's hard to track. So make sure your path and your ID and everything is right. So now I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to import this configuration. Okay, it's going to ask, import a single configuration, blah, blah. The action cannot be undone. That's kind of scary. Okay, so I'm going to confirm. Okay, it did. So let's see what having done, I can go to the command line. I can come back here, make a little bit bigger, make a little bit. Okay, so I have to make sure that I do the Drush CR. And let's see whether it brings on. Yes, now we can see another one we just created from the GUI, right? It's called Test for Migrate CSV. And now, if I go back, if I go to my site, before I do anything, if I go to content, let me just click. I'll clean them all. So it's clean, it's empty, right? So in my CSV file, I have 3 nodes, test 1 and 2 and 3. So I'll show you in the CSV file here. Here, just simple, those, you have to, so in the CSV file, you have to follow this format because you have to give in its column, the ID, title, and body, and use the follow the typical CSV format. You can actually, easiest way is to actually create in the Excel. You create it and then just save as CSV. So my expectation when I import, I want to see those 3 nodes in my content, right? So I'm going to do that. So now, let's see Drush. I think Drush migrate, import, and you have to give them ID, which is this one. So it's going to say, okay, process 3 items. And then when you go back, I want to see those 3. So it's on. Yeah. So that's kind of a manual way and kind of a simple way, kind of we want to. So the reason I'm presenting this one, because it's kind of a good way to understand, the grasp what it's doing when you create the plugins and everything. Do you want to kind of understand what Drupal does it for you? So if you look at the YAML file, we stick it in. So next step, I'm going to show you how you can utilize the things in the custom module. But before you do that, I want to explain the structure of the YAML file. We stick into the configuration. So let's go through that real quick. So I guess I don't have it anything, just as a...
It's one of the tabs up top.
Yeah. So let me just create something. Test. Oh, it's gone, actually, yeah. So it's okay. So I'll go through the different file. I have another file. So here. So this is what is done. And now I'm going to show you how I built the custom module with actually the CS file on it. And then you can just enable the files, enable the custom modules, and then you can just run it. So in your development, you don't want to have a source file sitting on other directories and you have to kind of copy it. You want to commit everything onto the same directory, and when you enable it, the developer just should have a content on it, and then run the migrate imports with ID, and it's all set. So one of my use cases that I'm using for this one, because one of my projects I'm working on, we do a lot of Drush SI, which is we want to have every time any code is merged, we want to have a clean site installation with a profile. So all the database will be just wiped out. You have nothing to. So every time you have to create a node, right? Go to whatever, repeat. So I have just 5 or 6 nodes that I like, just very generic ones that I don't have to create every time. So in custom module, I just go enable it because that it's in the code. You never get wiped out. And when you when you do the Drush SI and everything, clean installation, and you enable your module and import it. So you will have the nodes from your modules. That's what I'm using, and I'm going to share with you how I did it. So any questions so far? Kind of a, yeah, okay. So let's go to the so we did this, and yeah, I think I covered everything. So this is the next slide. Was the what is the major steps that I did? I just want to have steps just in case you need test it locally or follow the instructions. So pretty much straightforward. You download all the enabling the migration modules, download the migrate source CSV and enable it, and download all the modules. And yeah, make sure another thing is before you do anything about migration, make sure your Drush version. That's important. You're up to date and you're running the Drush where you have database connection. So if you set your environment to VirtualBox or Docs, you have to go SSH into the box so you can run the command. Otherwise, you're going to have an error. And and then create a simple CSV file call. So those are the basic steps. So I just put it together. Yeah, and then Drush migrate. Yeah, I think that's good. So next one is migrate process plugins. So in there are 3 YAML files. There's one top, what's called source plugin. The next main one is migrate process plugins. So there are a lot of them are actually provided from the core process plugin. So if you go to this website, actually there are pretty extensive list that they provide. Like, entity exists, extract, but there's something like a get method, you don't have to explicitly say it. Even though you don't say it, it just knows. If you just omit it, they will know exactly certain things. And the machine names is provided in the process plugin. So there are a lot of use case. There's a lot of examples there too. So I usually, when I migrate certain things or if I want to play around something, you go to that directory and look at their APIs or examples and README files, particularly README files, and then you can test it, and then you can sort of kind of see whether it fits your purpose. And second one is process from the Migrate Plus. It's one of the Contrib modules, but it has a lot of the Migrate process plugins you need. This website has the list and all of it, so you can go through. So common things are array pop, array shift, entity lookups like that. So it tells you those are the plugins, what it returns, and how to use it. So I always think that it's good to utilize the existing ones from whether it's a core or contributed one before you write your own. It'll save your time and also save any times for testing too. So when you write your own code, you have to. There's significant effort for testing purpose, testing time, and that's back and forth. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. And so destination plugin. So that's actually I'll also overview on the actually file. So your Migrate API destination plugin indicates what kind of Drupal entities. So there are 2 types of Drupal entities: the content entities and the configuration entities. So mostly in the content entities you can have revisions. The configuration you cannot, but the content entities knows user taxonomy terms, and there are actually a lot of So in the destination plugin, the typical YAML file will say destination node entity : node entity : taxonomy. That's the kind of a typical format I'll pinpoint in the code. So that's where you are saving as particular type of entity. So you have to kind of specify that at the destination plugin. So before I go to create the custom modules and all the stuff, there is something I assuming that you have an experience is setting your local environment, and then I'm going to use a lot of a command like the composer. It's a lot quicker, and Drupal 8 recommends to use a composer. So everything you should run your requiring all the modules to be with the composer require, and and also I use the Drupal console to generate the modules, also to generate any. Actually, Drupal console has a migration. You can create the migration Drupal console. Forgot the Drupal. Yeah, I can see the list, and then also Drush. So, okay, let's see now. Go to the site, and then let's see how here. So best way would be show the code first, and show how I built it. So right now, this is my root directory, the web. That's where the index.php is, and I put my modules under custom, and I call migrate demo. So the quick way is actually create the module is actually using the Drupal console, which is here. ls, you see where I am. I'm here. And if you Drupal, so if you have a Drupal console installed properly, and if you type the Drupal list, it'll give you all the available commands that you can use. So, for example, I'm going to use Drupal module right here. You can use just Drupal module, which is GM is the alias, generate the module. So I'm going to do Drupal generate, where you can use the module. And then it's going to ask a bunch of questions. What is your module name? What is your module name? I'm just going to say test. And what is your machine name? Yeah, you can give whatever. And then it's going to all the path. You can, if you have a different path, you can give it here. But before you do, you have to create the path if you want something else. And your description and your package name. That's where it's going to appear on your Drupal. So if you want, oftentimes you put your specific site-specific modules in the same location together, and this is where you do it. And the version, you want to generate the module? Yes, of course. You want a feature at this time? No, I do not want that. And do you want to add a composer.json file? No, we don't actually, I don't need that at this point. And do you need any module dependency? No. So you need unit test. If you say yes to unit test, they create actually default the frameworks, the scaffoldings for you, for unit test. So it's pretty nice. But for today, to make it simple, I'm just gonna say no. And do you want generate theme of a template? Yes, you can, but I'm gonna say no. And the last command is, do you want to proceed with the operations? And just yes. So now, if you go to, they're going to put on that's my root directory. And if you go to ls and go to cd modules, custom. So here, there's my test. It's been created. So that's the kind of, I love to use the Drupal console, because a lot of times when you start creating your modules, the namings, you spell here and there, or that's avoid a lot of the headaches. So Drupal console is so worth it to make the things right. And now, if you look at the structure of that, it's pretty simple. Let's see. Yeah, because we have only YAML and the module, right? But we do not want to have but this is the just bare minimum module. So and then we're going to enable it. So what else do you need? This is I already created before the class. So what do we need? Actually, we need this migration directories and the source directories, which has a plugins that we are going to put. So in order to do that, you have to You can actually go and create manually, but because this one actually you can get the framework, how the directories are structured. You can simply copy from the core module. Just it's straightforward. All the modules are structured that way. It is easy, or you can use the Drupal Console. One of the commands in the Drupal Console is if you go to Drupal list, I think it's called Migrate. Yes. You do the migrate, and it will ask you a lot of steps. That's how you can set it up, and it spills out the frameworks for you. So assuming that you have all the sort of scaffolding, all the directories that are set. So now I'm going to share. So here the module is just straightforward. I didn't do anything. I didn't touch anything. It just put the help files for you, and there's no dependency here. Only dependency is migrate, because this one will be doed when you generate the migrate with the Drupal console. It takes care of you. That's a beauty about when you use the Drupal console. You said, oh, I want to use the migrate, blah blah blah, and then they actually put it everything's for you. So that's nice. And the other, I guess I must be said yes for but it's empty, composer JSON. And here, this is where all the sort of plugins are going to be sitting on. So right now I have one migrate demo PHP. This is already created because I created the migrate with the Drupal console command, and it puts everything for you. And this one I did not touch anything. I just say, so when you create the migrate in the Drupal console, they ask you a lot of, what your database table name do you want, and blah, blah. So you just give the specifics, and they spills out the code. And now I did not touch anything. Here, what I actually did was actually I create this migration. I created by, come in and create it. And I create this YAML file. So this is what I'm going to show you here. So this is the exactly same file that we typed into that single imports configuration page, right? If you remember, only difference is actually this ID. I used the test CSV, right? But now this one is article _ CSV import, right? This ID has to be exactly matched with your YAML file name. So if you use this ID name and your name of the YAML file doesn't match, your Drupal migration they're not going to find. It's a sort of a promises you have to follow. So a lot of people it actually in the Drupal website when you do tutorials, it emphasizes it, but it's like sometimes it's just one line, match the name, but that's how they find it. That's the key. And the label is just the text. And the migration groups right now is ESM imports, but there's a lot of other groups. And I want to go through this here. This first block, it says source, plugin, path, right, delimiter. This is the one actually defines your source plugin. So this is my sort of like a definition that I'm going to use for my source plugin. So here, if you're going to use something else, it can be not a CSV. It can be database, the SQL. There's another good examples on actually how can you open up the database SQL, open up the database connection and read directly. You can do that. So there's all different settings, configurations you can handle, and this is where you tell them, this is my definition, and you tell them, and this ID. And those column names has to exactly match with your CSV file at this point because you are importing it from there. So this is one example, and the other one is here. Next one main thing is the process plugin. It's to process what is important and to sort of a mapping. I call mapping. So this is right now we don't have any plugin because. Right now, you just use the get method. You don't have to say plugin equal plugin :get. You can say that, but you don't have to say it. The Drupal is know enough that if you don't say it, they will use it. By explicitly they use it. But they're going to map the field from the external source to, this is a destination, from title to title, body to body. And these are the plugins. For this type, you're going to use the default value. And the articles is the default value from you're going to read to. So they're going to create the article node. And the last one is...
So, just real quick, the source is on the right?
Yes, yes.
The destination is
yes,
on the
yes.
Okay.
So for example, if this one happened to be the same, but if you have Drupal A site different from 7, and you have a CSV file that actually selectively pick after you talk to your client, this is the only thing that we want to import. And then you have to, this is where you cleanse up and then make sure that map to the right field to field. Yeah. So, and then destination plugin, as I mentioned, this is the node, simple node. It could be, like entity, or it could be like a taxonomy terms or, medias or whatever. It's, there's a lot of things that are available. And yeah, so this is where it sits. So actually I have one, so let's test it. I disabled my module at this point. So right here, so when I enabled my module, the migrate demo, I'm expecting to see article CSV import ID in my migration. That's what I want to see, right? So let's see it. If I go here, Control K, okay, so I'm gonna go migrate, Drush, status. So we have only 2, right? Because we imported 2, and I'm gonna enable my module. So actually, it's gonna show two additional migration ID, because I have another one. It's called this one, custom article with the external image. So this one actually have this is the test. This is the one actually you can import, and you can migrate actually with the images from external page. So if you have a node you're using all the time and you don't wanna recreate all the time, this is where you can sitting on here, save it. And also you can share with your, teammates or something. So your teammate doesn't have to create a node, go click node and click the image field and all this stuff. So you don't have to do that. So my expectation is these are I'm still working on it, but these 2, when I enable the module, I'm expecting to see 2 more migration IDs, which is article CSV imports and the custom article migration with external images. That's what I want to see if the module works, right? So let's see it. I'm going to enable it. Okay, successfully enabled. So that's good. So let's going to do status. Yes. So now we have 2 more, right? It's added from the custom module because I enabled it, right? But it hasn't been actually, but it's not really, it's just enabling, but you have to still import it, right? So I'm going to, before I import, let me make sure what I have, because let's delete them all just to make it easy. It's okay, I have no node. So right now in the first one, article CSV import, I'm going to import from this file, right? That's my source. So this file is right here. I put on the data in the same directory, and right here, article CSV. So those are 3 sort of nodes. So I'm just going to say, that's page 1. It's kind of the same out. I guess that's fine. So we are going to see 3 more nodes coming in from this one, right? So I'm just going to run. So migrate, Drush. So again, we have to give the ID, right? So let's do this one first. The article CSV imports. I'm gonna import, let's see. But why is it 0 created?
It says that there were 3 that were imported.
It should be process the 3 items. Uh-oh. Oh, I think we have to do the Drush CR. Let's do Drush CR. Oh no. So Drush, did I enable the module? Yeah, I did, right? Yeah. So I'm not sure. Let's try the. It worked before.
Risks of live demos.
Yeah. Import, so import. Let's do this one. This one is using the external images. So let's see whether this one works. No, okay. So this is fishy. So let's see. Is that because actually, Drush?
Yeah, sometimes if you do a Drush migrate status, sometimes it keeps track of how many records and which records it's already imported. So even though you've deleted them, sometimes you can do a migrate rollback.
Yes,
So
that's
one of the things that we found useful is if you're building a new site, you can continually import rollback until you have all those migrate classes well defined.
Okay, so I rolled back the imports and
Is that just like bound to the ID?
Yeah.
It knows that it ran article CSV import.
Yeah, so a lot of times you'll have a whole bunch of different content types that you're importing, and maybe they're being transformed from another system or from another database, and some of them will work, and then like the 1005th record will break everything. You gotta find out why.
Yeah, you have to.
Fix your class, roll it all back, and migrate again until you get it.
also the other actually helpful is actually Drush reset. Because I had
reset status.
Yeah, reset status, yeah. Oh, I have to say, yeah. Let me reset. Okay. Let me do one more time. That's totally unexpected. Okay. Okay, let's do one more time to clean. All right. So let's do imports one more time to see. Yeah, this time it comes through. Okay, so now it's gonna come when I refresh the page. Yeah, it shows up. So I have kind of a similar experience, like I have to actually reset it. I'm not actually exactly like, I think there's something right. When you run it, the way I deleted in the, I clicked and deleted it, right? But in the migration, I don't think they recognize as actually node got deleted. To actually delete it, they imported from the migration, I think we have to roll back. Yeah. So now let's roll back. So if I roll back, oh, that was tough. So roll back. So we're going to expect it's going to remove all 3 nodes that we imported, right? So roll back. Yeah. Yeah, it's gone. So
in that way, you can keep your migrated content kind of logically separate from the content that exists on your site. So as you're migrating stuff in, and you go, oops, my classes were broken, and now it's spewed junk all over my site.
Yeah.
Roll it back.
So my local instance actually have like just a couple of them because we don't. It's a blank, but sometimes some of the things it's not work. When you bring it in, it doesn't work. So but you want to keep it separate, and I like to keep it on the module, the custom module inside. It's sitting onto the data directory, and you just say read from there. Same thing with you can do with the images or anything like medias that you want to look at it, and then just load it. And then if it doesn't work, just roll back. It's safe. Instead of, all the SQL drop or anything like that, we'll bring it. This is a lot cleaner and nicer way to use the Migration API. And I kind of like it because on my project, we do a lot of site installation every time. We have to spin up that's what kind of at this point, the team like to do. And this by using the Migration API was really helpful to use that. And let me show you. Actually, the other one was actually wasn't actually with the this one with the external image. So 2 items are created. And it's really nice. When you go to these pages, these images come through. So imagine you can have, if you have those kind of a node and everything set, you know how you use the devil to generate the dummy contents for your things? Instead of all random pictures, you can actually have images that are relevant to your client or to the developers. So you don't have to do weird pictures or different sizes and all this, or at least kind of relative contents. And you can share with your teammates or other people. So that's why I kind of loved it, and that's how I use it. And yeah, and also there, actually, I'm working on kind of creating the using the paragraphs. Another my project actually, we are using the paragraphs. So how the paragraph is a reference. So it's more complicated because now you have entity reference. So you have to actually load the entity first and then grab the UUID and kind of populate it. So it's kind of if my next goal is actually having some sort of a node get created with paragraphs on it. So you just create, so instead of clicking paragraphs, you load this node in your configuration, in your custom modules using Migration API. So you're good to go. So it'll save a lot of time and it's nice and clean. So yeah, I think that is it. I think just this, so, I think just this is pretty straightforward. This YAML file has the, external links and everything is here. You can actually, a lot of them can be found in the Drupal website here. The source, the plugin. See, they are using different plugin, right? Embedded data. The other one uses the CSV. So that's how you always change. And the ID 1, 2, right, blah, blah. So they actually directly stick it in here, but you can actually read it from somewhere else too. It all depends on how you set it. And this is where you define your configuration entity here. So, yeah. So do you have any questions? Yeah.
So that plugin, like if my data source was JSON or XML, I would be looking for a plugin that focuses on that?
Yeah. So in the Drupal, the org site, if you go to the Migration API, particular under source plugin API, source plugins, there's 3 sections mainly for CSV and JSON, JSON XML, and then the database.
And is that similar, like YAML config?
Yes, yeah. Okay. So, and they have a pretty specific documentations. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the core has pretty much all of the plugins that you're going to need. What happens is those plugins that core provides have specific ways that it's going to be just the data. So say you're using JSON and you're using HalJSON, for example. The plugin doesn't recognize the So you would take that class, because they're all basically all classes,
Yeah.
and extend it, and then you can put your own code in.
Okay.
Yeah, and I remember that actually this image import was pretty nice too, the process plugin, because image is actually considered as a file, and if you look at it, it's a file, so there's FID involved and all the stuff but they took care of it, so you don't have to worry about it. A lot to read. It's a lot to read. Actually, no, I prefer to read the books, but I want to be more comfortable reading the documentation from the online, particularly Drupal API. But it's a different structure. There's no chapters, right? There's only sidebars. So, okay. So if you don't have any questions, so thank you for coming. And yeah. Oh, are you from the chief? Are you from the chief?
Oh, no.
Oh.
It's better swag.
Oh, okay.